My own son told me one day, "Dad, I'm not going to take care of you. I have my own family. You'll have to move to a nursing home." The words hit me like a freight train. My own boy, the one I raised, the one I worked my hands raw for, the one I thought loved me, had decided my life no longer mattered. I sat there in my worn recliner, the late afternoon sun falling across the living room, trying to make sense of it. For nearly 4 decades, I had poured everything into my family. I built my business from nothing. I put my body and soul into providing a life better than mine had been. And now, I was disposable. My name is Samuel Carter, 60 years old, a man who had fought to survive, to thrive, and to give his children every opportunity I never had. I was a man proud of his work, his independence, and his life, but none of that mattered to them. It started with little things, snide remarks, eye rolls, helpful suggestions about downsizing or preparing for retirement. They noticed everything, the gray in my hair, the ache in my knees, the faint tremor when I lifted a box. Every detail was ammunition. Tasha, my daughter-in-law, smiled, but there was steel in her eyes. Malik, my son, stayed quiet, calculating. Every time I offered advice, offered help, even just shared a memory from my youth, they acted as though I were already irrelevant. And then came the words that changed everything. "You'll have to move to a nursing home. I have my own family and problems." Assisted living, nursing home, not a suggestion, not a question, a decree. They had already decided my future without me. I remembered Denise, my late wife, and the life we built together. We had worked hard, saved smart, invested wisely. She had always said, "Sam, we're leaving something behind, not just money, but a legacy." Now that legacy seemed invisible to the people I trusted most. I spent that evening walking through the house we had built together, memories in every room, the kitchen where Denise baked, the garage where I taught Malik how to swing a hammer, the backyard where we celebrated birthdays and graduations. I realized something I had never admitted. My children didn't see me as their father anymore. I was simply someone in their way, a man they were ready to remove. And it wasn't just about the nursing home. It was about control, about entitlement, about the casual cruelty of children who believed that love had a price tag attached. That night I lay awake thinking, how did it come to this? How had I, a man who had given everything, been reduced to a text message and a cold, calculated plan to send me away? But even in the fear, in the hurt, a seed of clarity began to grow. If they saw me as a burden, maybe it was time I started living for myself. Maybe it was time to see that my life, my health, my dignity were mine to protect. This was only the beginning. The day I realized that the man I had raised, my own son, was willing to put me in a nursing home and wash his hands of me, would set in motion a journey I couldn't ignore. And I was ready.
The mornings were the hardest. I woke to the sound of the coffee maker, already brewing for Malik and Tasha, though I hadn't touched a cup yet. The smell used to bring comfort. Now it reminded me that I wasn't truly part of this house anymore. I was a guest, an afterthought, someone they tolerated. Every day followed a pattern that felt rehearsed, like they were waiting for me to make a mistake. A misplaced dish, a slow step on the stairs, a forgotten appointment, it was all noted. Tasha's eyes would flicker with disapproval, and Malik would sigh, a quiet, calculated sigh that cut deeper than words. "Dad, don't touch that," Malik would say, reaching for something I had lifted carefully. "You'll hurt yourself." I was careful. I had been careful all my life, but now even my caution was used against me. Every gesture, every movement became evidence of my inability. They started changing routines without telling me. A doctor's appointment moved, a grocery list ignored, furniture rearranged. I discovered these things only when I tried to follow my normal rhythm, and each time their smiles were sweet, their words polite, but there was an unmistakable edge beneath: control. Even meals had become a battlefield. Tasha would insist I eat only certain things, claiming concern for my health, while Malik joked about my memory. "Dad, don't forget which pill goes in which cup," he'd say, chuckling. But I knew it wasn't just a joke. It was a reminder. I was dependent now, and they enjoyed it. I tried to hold on to my dignity by keeping busy. I repaired the fence, fixed the leaky faucet, even cleaned the garage. I reminded myself that these were things I had done all my life, but my efforts were either ignored or subtly criticized. "You shouldn't be lifting that," Malik said one morning, watching me replace a broken hinge. "You need to rest, Dad. Don't overdo it." Rest? I had worked for decades, building, fixing, protecting. Now rest wasn't something I wanted. It was a weapon they wielded to make me feel useless. Even conversations became exercises in careful navigation. If I mentioned a memory, a lesson, or even a suggestion, I was met with gentle corrections or dismissive nods. "Times have changed, Dad," Tasha would say, the words soft, almost caring, yet sharp enough to cut. And yet I saw it all, every whispered conversation in the kitchen, every glance exchanged over my head, every subtle manipulation designed to make me feel small. They believed I didn't notice, that I couldn't see through their polite cruelty. But I did. I noticed. And slowly, a quiet anger began to grow, one that was not loud, not destructive yet. It was a focused, simmering realization that my life, my home, and my dignity were being stolen from me, one polite word at a time. This was my life now. A house full of people who once called me father and father-in-law, now strangers in their own home. But beneath their smiles, beneath their casual cruelty, I was learning something important. If I didn't stand for myself, no one else would, and I intended to. It started with a letter I wasn't supposed to see. Malik had left it carelessly on the kitchen counter, just for a moment, but enough for me to notice. My hands shook as I picked it up, not from fear, but from a cold, sinking realization. It was from the lawyer, the final arrangements for my estate. They were moving faster than I expected. Every word on that page felt like a punch, every clause a reminder that my life, my home, and the years I had spent building my family were being reduced to numbers on paper. Malik and Tasha were already planning their future without me. Their casual cruelty had always been subtle, but this was blatant. I sat in my old chair, the one they had tried to push into the corner like it didn't belong, and I thought about my life. The back-breaking years, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices I had made so my family could thrive. And now, my own son, my blood, was ready to consign me to a nursing home while he enjoyed the comfort of my work. I remembered the words he had said, the ones that burned brighter every time I recalled them. "Dad, I'm not going to take care of you. I have my own family." I had been quiet for so long, enduring subtle insults and gentle manipulations, but now I realized I could no longer afford silence. There was a plan here, quiet, careful, deliberate, and I would need my own plan. The days that followed were strange. I acted as if nothing had changed, keeping up my routines, fixing the things that needed fixing, smiling when Malik joked about my forgetfulness. But behind the calm, I began to take mental notes. Every word, every glance, every pattern. I cataloged their habits, their weaknesses, the way Tasha's kindness had a sharp edge, the way Malik's jokes always carried judgment. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. I was focused.
Every small act of disrespect, every tiny attempt to control me, fueled a quiet determination that I had never felt before. They thought they were in charge, but they had underestimated me. And then, one night, as I sat alone in the living room, listening to the silence, a thought struck me. If they thought they could erase me quietly, if they thought my years of hard work and wisdom meant nothing, they were wrong. I would not go quietly to a nursing home. I would not let my life's work be stolen, and I would make sure they understood, in ways they could never ignore, that the man they tried to diminish still had power, still had plans, still had a voice. The game had changed, and now I was ready to play.
The next morning, I woke up early, as I always had, before Malik and Tasha stirred. The house was still heavy with sleep, but I felt an energy that hadn't been there in years. I moved silently through the rooms, not as a passive observer of my own life, but as someone taking it back, step by step. I started small, fixing things they had ignored or ridiculed me for, tightening loose handles, checking the boiler, arranging the pantry neatly. Each act was invisible to them, or so they thought, but to me it was a reminder that this house still belonged to me, not their convenience or judgment. Then came the interactions, carefully measured. I asked Malik for help with a minor issue in a way that made him feel needed, then suggested a solution that subtly exposed his ignorance. Tasha smiled, pretending not to notice, but I saw the slight tension in her jaw. Every conversation became a chess move, every word a test. At meals, I let them talk over me, nodding politely, but mentally cataloging every slight, every smirk, every dismissive glance. They didn't realize I was observing, learning, storing everything for later. Evenings were the hardest. I would sit alone in my study, rereading the letter from the lawyer, reviewing my options, imagining the eventual moment when I would no longer be at their mercy. I thought about the nursing home they had casually mentioned, the way Malik's words had cut through me. "Dad, I have my own family. You'll be better off in a place where people can take care of you." I felt a flicker of something darker than hurt, something sharper. It was clarity, focus, the kind that comes from being underestimated. I realized that patience was my ally. The more they believed I was helpless, the more I could maneuver behind the scenes. I didn't need to raise my voice or confront them openly. Subtlety would be my weapon, silence my shield. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began planting seeds of doubt, little reminders that the house, the finances, the legacy, they were not theirs yet. Little truths dropped in casual remarks, enough to unsettle, but not enough to expose my plan. Malik laughed at my suggestions, Tasha rolled her eyes, but beneath it all, I saw the cracks forming. They thought they were winning. They had no idea the game had changed. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing. And when the time came, I would remind them, in ways they could never ignore, who truly controlled the future. Because this story, the one they thought they were writing for me, was mine to finish.
Weeks passed, and life continued in its quiet torment. Malik and Tasha grew more careless, more self-assured, thinking I was still the same powerless man they could manipulate. They mocked my routines, brushed off my advice, and openly planned for the future they assumed would be theirs. Then, one afternoon, the lawyer called. The final draft of the will had arrived. I sat at my desk, reading it line by line, savoring the clarity that Malik and Tasha would never expect. Every decision, every provision carefully arranged to ensure that their greed would meet subtle resistance. I allowed myself a small smile. the house they thought they could claim without consequence, the inheritance they imagined as their birthright. It was all a game I was now playing to win. At dinner that evening, Malik casually mentioned the nursing home plan, his smirk sharp. "I've been thinking, Dad, maybe it's better if you moved into a place that can actually take care of you," he said. I looked up slowly, letting my calm surprise them. "I appreciate your concern, Malik," I said softly, "but I'm very capable of managing my own life. In fact, I've made arrangements that ensure I can live exactly how I choose." Tasha's eyes narrowed. Malik's smirk faltered. I didn't need to say more. The weight of implication hung in the air. Over the following days, I watched them squirm in subtle ways. Casual remarks, offhand comments about their future, even their laughter, it all betrayed unease. I didn't gloat. I didn't confront them directly. I simply existed, quietly confident, fully in control of the narrative they had assumed was theirs. I began taking small, deliberate actions, consulting with the lawyer on additional protections, subtly reorganizing finances, and reinforcing my independence. Every step reminded me and them that the house, the legacy, and my dignity were not theirs to take. By now, Malik and Tasha were acting differently around me. Their impatience showed. Their laughter seemed forced. They didn't understand that the man they had dismissed, ridiculed, and tried to manipulate was no longer just surviving. I was preparing to finish what they had assumed they could steal. The game had changed. The rules were mine, and they would learn, far too late, that underestimating a father's resolve, even a quiet one, is a dangerous mistake. Because I wasn't just defending my life anymore. I was reclaiming it, piece by piece, in a way they would never forget.
The day came when the lawyer asked Malik and Tasha to meet. They arrived, confident as ever, thinking the will would confirm what they had already assumed, that the house, the money, and the control of my life were theirs. They didn't notice my calm. They didn't notice the small details I had adjusted over the weeks, every clause, every stipulation, every safeguard carefully placed to expose their greed. The lawyer began to read. Each line revealed more than they expected, limitations on their access, conditions for inheritance tied to respect and care, and protections ensuring I remained independent. Their smirks faltered, their casual arrogance crumbled. Malik's face went pale. This isn't possible," he stammered. Tasha's hands shook as she gripped her purse. I simply sat back, silent, letting the words sink in. "You've underestimated me," I said softly, the weight of years and quiet endurance in my voice. "You assumed I was powerless, that I would be easily pushed aside, and that my life was yours to control. You were wrong. Every insult, every dismissive remark, every plan to send me to a nursing home, it had led to this moment. I had watched, I had waited, and now, finally, the scales were balanced." Malik and Tasha left that day, not with the triumph they imagined, but with an uneasy awareness. The man they had tried to manipulate, the father and husband they had disrespected, had outmaneuvered them at every turn. I stayed in my home, in the life I had built. My routines remained unchanged, my dignity was intact, and the quiet power of having survived and outsmarted the ones who should have loved me filled me with a sense of peace that no one could take away. Sometimes I would catch Malik's uneasy glance from across the street, Tasha's forced smile at family gatherings, and I would remember with a quiet satisfaction that they had learned far too late. Never underestimate the resolve of a father, nor the strength of a life quietly lived with pride. I was not just surviving, I was victorious. Did you see how betrayal turned into the hardest lesson of their lives? If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story is even more shocking. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.